Hey everyone, you're listening to Fantasy Uptick. I'm Jeremiah Blue, and today we're going to be talking about fantasy baseball. This is going to be the first fantasy baseball podcast that we've ever done on this show. This is something we're going to be doing moving forward. With me today is Brandon. He's going to be focusing a lot on the baseball side of things. What we're going to talk about is essentially that they're trying to do a shortened season this year. The owners have just proposed 50 games. It's going to be shorter than when we're used to in baseball. So we're going to talk about how that would affect fantasy people and then what we actually think is going to end up happening. So Brandon, with that, let's get started. So Brandon, what are you expecting from Major League Baseball this season?
Well, yeah, I'm a little nervous there, man. I want to see some baseball, but, they can't be further apart, right? I mean, they come in with a 50-game schedule, the owners do, and the players fire back at 114. They're looking to get as much out of their prorated salary as they can. They want more games, obviously, but if that's to happen, they're going to have to start now. I mean, we're already 3 months in.
Yeah, we're getting really close. I even saw something saying that they wanted to start spring training June 10th. That's like right around the corner, and they're still so far apart. So yeah, the players wanted to make as much money on their prorated salaries as they can, so they requested 114 games, and the owners don't believe they can make money during the regular season. So they think they're going to lose money during the regular season, and they very well might because their TV deals essentially don't make the kind of money that NBA and NFL do. They make the majority of their money in the stadiums. My point being is they typically make their money that way. So every regular season game, they're going to end up losing money. They're going to have to eat that as the owners. So the fewer games that they can get where they're paying the players their prorated rates and get to the playoffs, that's where they end up making the money from the owner perspective. So they want the fewer games, and the players, of course, they want to get as close to what they were expecting to make this year as their full salaries they can. So the more games, the better, since everything's going to be prorated. Now, they did come down from what they initially offered, which was kind of like a tier system, but essentially now everybody's going to get it prorated. They agreed to that. They threw the 50 games out there. I think this is a good sign that we're at least going to get baseball, even if it is something as small as 50 games. So I think that, first of all, is a plus. The way I see it, though, like the owners, this is like a monopoly, essentially. Like this is a legalized monopoly. That's what Major League Baseball is. And they should, as the owners, have to take that. They're supposed to be, if you can't afford to run a team, you need to sell that team. Because in baseball, essentially, the owners are going to continue to make money year in, year out. The baseball players have such a small window of when they can actually make money with their like talents of being baseball players, right? So it's just like any other business. If I own a bar and I have a bartender who's an employee, I'm not going to go to the bartender and be like, hey, you have to take less money because we're not getting as many customers. No, like we gave her a salary or him a salary or like a amount of money that we're going to play. As the owner, I'm taking the risk because if the profits go up, I also benefit from that. And essentially, that's the way it should be working with the owners. I think this is going to get done. I think the owners are just being kind of greedy, and they're trying to, it's a negotiation tactic. They're trying to get as much as they can from the players. But I think we're going to end up with somewhere around 80 games. That's a guess. But even if we end up with 50, I don't think it's going to go over 100. I think that's basically what we're looking at. So what do you think from a fantasy perspective? What are some of the things you're going to take into account with a shortened season?
Well, I'm a kind of guy that likes to. I'm a waiver guy. I like to find those guys mid-season. They're getting hot. Example for a pitcher. A guy that had you didn't know his name at the beginning of the season, but all of a sudden he's an up and coming. And he's a number 3, number 4 pitcher on that team. He's facing the other number 3, number 4s, and he's red hot. That's what I like to give.
Working the wire, yeah. So that's going to be a little bit of difference. So me, I'm with you. I like to work the wire. There's certain players I always target on the wire. For me, it's always closers. So I'll typically wait on closers, get a bunch of the guys that are in the battles during draft day, and then I can actually just go pick up closers at mid-season. I think the closers is going to be the one that's going to change the most with the shortened season. I don't think managers are going to be a little bit more scared. I do think managers are going to be a little bit more scared to bench their guy and play around with who's closing and all that stuff with this short season, and every game is going to mean so much more. It's going to be like football in a way where every game matters so much because you go on a losing streak and now you're out of the playoffs, right? Even if you're a good team. So I think that the closers is going to be, especially getting the elite guys, but I think getting closers, it's going to be a lot harder for closers to get benched this year. So I think that's one thing. And then everything I've read is a lot of get younger pitchers that usually have an inning limit associated with them. They're not going to have an inning limit because it's going to be such a short season that they're not going to be able to hit that limit anyway. So now that closes the gap between them and the elite pitchers. So I've heard a lot of people or read a lot of things about people saying that go with elite bats, wait on pitching. I don't know if I buy into that because I think with some extended the rosters, I think that the pitchers there's going to be a lot more relievers on rosters because they're going to expand the teams, and I think they're going to bench those middle pitchers, the ones that you're talking about that might be having a good little run, but if they just go out there and have one bad inning, they're just going to pull them and start throwing relievers in there. Whereas with elite pitchers, you're going to let those guys sit out there and kind of do their thing because they're so much better than the relievers on those, or the middle relievers on those rosters.
Right. I mean, you're going to still go after the top bats in that league, obviously.
Yeah.
I think, but as far as your outfielders, you're going to start pinpointing toward those aces right away. I mean, you're going to pick up that second baseman. You know, there's not a whole lot of elite second baseman out there, but then I'm not changing my strategy at all.
Yeah, and that's basically
and
that's what I'm kind of leaning to myself. I don't think I'm going to change my strategy. I said the closers for sure. Guys like Tyler Glass now, Jesus Luzardo, Rich Hill. Those guys I might be moving up my roster because those are maybe guys that everybody kind of, again, the inning limit thing. There's injured players that were injured, like if we would have started back in, early April, that would have been, oh, we're not gonna take these guys. But now that we're moving into June, these guys have been injured and now are coming back from injuries. So I feel good about that. And I honestly feel more comfortable chasing, like if I'm going to chase anything on the wire, it's going to be bats. It's going to be the guys with the hot bats because typically with bats, they're a little bit, they maintain their heat streak a little bit longer. Like they'll have a hot month as opposed to pitchers that are just like up and down, with like they'll have one great game and the very next game they get blown up. And it's so hard to chase those pitchers around. Plus, I'll typically look at teams that are having bad years, like maybe they're not as good as we expected they were going to be, and I can kind of pick those matchups with pitchers. With the short season, we're not going to really know which. It's going to take us so long to figure that out on which teams we can stream against because we're not going to have as big a sample size, and by the time we realize what team is terrible, we're already at the end of the season. So I'm going to stick to my strategy, which is typically to go a little elite in pitching. Again, this year, I would say, like if you're a commissioner of a league, you should probably stick to Roto because the season's going to be so short that the head-to-head, like your regular season's going to be up in like 13 weeks, and then you're like, that now you're already in the playoffs, and it's really just not enough time, to figure out who is like the good teams in that head-to-head format, or 10 weeks even, it might be before the playoffs start, depending on how you do your playoffs. Roto is just so much easier because you can start from day one and when it ends. Plus, if something bad happens with COVID, they have to shut down the season again. At least in Roto, everybody knows the rules. Like, however much baseball we get in the regular season, because look at the NBA right now. The NBA, they're probably going to end their regular season. If you're in fantasy basketball, getting ready for your head-to-head playoffs, and it ended, which actually happened to me, like now the commissioner is going to have to decide, like, are we just going to we're going to lean on our tiebreaker situation, or are we going to let whoever was in first place just 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down for the playoff teams. With Roto, it's easy because who was winning? There's a strategy of who was in first place because Roto is basically accumulative stats. I think that's the best way to go, especially with this COVID stuff going on. And really, that's it. I'm just excited to talk about baseball. I really am. I know. I want to talk about real sports. We've been doing fantasy football for so long, and football is going to happen. Yeah, football is going to happen. Football is going to happen. We were excited about that, but if I want baseball to happen, and baseball will be missing a huge opportunity if they don't get their shit together, because if you can get baseball games, even spring training games right now, if they start spring training in June and they're televising that stuff, everybody's watching. So
Right.
baseball is
I just think if they start now, I mean, it's a sprint to the finish. I mean, they can market that like crazy. I mean, this is going to be exciting. If it starts right now, I mean, it's a sprint to the finish.
Oh, for sure. And I think that baseball is sitting currently around number 3 in pro sports. And not around. They are number 3 in pro sports when it comes to the United States. It's football, basketball, then it's baseball. And I honestly think the gap between basketball and baseball might be bigger than the gap between baseball and like hockey, you know? And hockey's probably going to get their stuff together, and people we're itching for sports. If baseball misses this opportunity to play baseball June and July while we're waiting because basketball's not going to come until the end of July. So basically the whole month of July, the only sports in town is going to be baseball if they get it worked out, you know? And again, spring training in June, they'll actually be able to televise that stuff, and we will be watching. If that comes on ESPN, I will watch it because I am starved for sports. You know? So baseball needs to realize that if the owners let this season go and they don't and we don't have baseball at all, I think that's going to be a hit that baseball is going to have a really hard time recovering from. What do you think about that?
I think I totally agree. I mean, you've got your diehard fans, right? You diehard baseball fans, and then you got these fans just, you know, they think baseball's boring. You know, they're not going to watch anyway. You know, but if they come on, they will watch. But if you don't have a season, who cares about those guys? You're hurting your big fans, your guys, your diehards, your regulars.
And I got to imagine, I mean, I don't know the stats on this. I'm sure there is stats on this somewhere, but like baseball is a pretty old fan base. Like the guys that are diehard baseball fans are the older guys. There's fewer young guys that are baseball fans than there are old guys. And the other sports is not that way. Basketball, they got a lot of the kids love basketball. Everybody loves football, but baseball's got just in general an older fan base. Again, it's America's pastime. It's an older sport, and it's been losing ground to those other sports for years, and now it's everybody's third favorite sport. So I think this is an opportunity for it to not necessarily compete with the NBA or NFL, but at least just reestablish itself as a powerhouse, major sport in the United States. So that's really my take. Like I said, we can go through it again. I think that closers for me, there's something I'm going to go after. Steals, that was one that I forgot to mention, but steals is one of those things that it's going to be such a short season. You got to get guys that can steal. You're not going to be able to trade and move around, get waiver wire stream steals. It's going to be hard. Basically, anything you like to stream, it's going to be really hard to stream that this year. So going after steals might get an uptick in value because you got to go after those guys you know are going to get you steals. Otherwise, you're going to be down the bottom at that category. You got anything else to add?
I think that's pretty much it. I think we covered it.
All right, nice. Nice to talk about baseball, right?
For sure.
All right, well, that does it for today's show. Thanks for watching. Again, like, subscribe. Let us know what you think about the baseball season coming up. And maybe you guys got some ideas that we haven't talked about what you think this is going to do for who you draft and how you go about your strategy. Let us know in the comments. We can discuss it. Till next time, see ya!